I awoke with a sense of completion for the first time in my life. Such a strange feeling to accomplish on a thin mattress of a bed in a psychiatric ward. My roommate had been released just a few hours prior, though oddly enough I did not feel lonely without the nightly company I had grown accustomed to. The insomnia had pushed through the sleeping pills, and I was stuck being awake for the night. I felt calmed from my anxiety for a change, the flashing white light shining onto the ceiling for once being comforting instead of irritating. I rose into a sitting position to survey the world outside the barred windows. The moon shone bright and full in the darkened sky, the light washing out the stars nestled close to the aura of the orb. I held my hand up and curved it as though I were holding the moon between my thumb and forefinger, imagining how it would affect the tides if I could pull it from the sky. After a few minutes of contemplation, I decided to put my feet on the ground and considered taking my chances with the counselor that kept guard outside the doors. At times I would catch them sleeping and manage to sneak past the third-floor hallway to the door leading to the roof. It was protected by a keypad that required a 4-digit code, but science of worn-down numbers surrounded by the corroded metal dirtied by fingerprints gave away the secret. A few others had figured it out as well, but the staff had underestimated us, so they never caught on to our nightly visits outside, thus never bothered to update the code. I opened my door, fully prepared to give the excuse that I was in need of an escorted trip to the bathroom if the counselor keeping guard was in fact awake. There was nobody there. She was probably taking an unescorted trip to the bathroom. Lucky bitch. I stepped out into the hall and closed the door silently behind me. My feet bore only thick blue hospital socks with white skid-free materials arranged in dots and stripes on the soles, so stepping swiftly and heavily onto the thin tan carpet betrayed no sound as I rushed to the roof door at the end of the hall. I pressed in the code, 4196, and stepped in the echoing stairwell with its concrete steps and black painted metal banisters, carefully closing the door behind me as I caught a glimpse of the night counselor taking her place back on her seat. Her head rolled back against the wall, and I knew she would likely be asleep before I made my way back. I dug a piece of broken concrete out of its hiding place in plain sight and went up 2 half flights of stairs to the door outside. I pushed it open and reveled in the sight of the garden walk landscaped for the patient's outdoor visits. Illuminated in the moonlight, it looks otherworldly, as opposed to being too bright, too colorful, and too contrived in the harsh light of day. The hedges and plants created the path of a universal labyrinth, for meditation, they say, though the history of the path was much more sinister before being co-opted for the sake of spirituality. I did not take in the sights as I walked the curving and turning path. My intention was not to meditate, but simply breathe in the fresh air and trade oxygen and carbon dioxide with the plants. At the heart of the labyrinth was another staircase I had never seen before. The banister was gilded with silver, and the steps seemed to be made of light itself, though they were as solid as the concrete foundation of the building I was in. I traversed the steps slowly, one at a time, keeping a tight grip on the banister as I ascended. Though in my sight there could not have been more than 12 steps, it seemed to go on forever. Looking down, I could make out the whole of the labyrinth, while ahead of me the moon seemed to be coming closer. I was standing at a golden bridge before too long, leading to a large round rock lit up at the edges by the distant sunlight. Crossing the bridge, I came to realize that I had climbed all the way up to the moon. When I reached the opposite end of the bridge, I was greeted by a girl about 19 years of age. She had the type of face every girl dreamed about wanting. Straight, fluffy white hair held back from her face with an orange and turquoise striped headband. Her dress was orange with turquoise spaghetti straps and lining at the hem of her short skirt falling just 4 inches above the white lace-up boots that covered her shins. "We have been anticipating your arrival," she spoke in a curt voice as she pushed a door open in the moon to reveal a sitting room decorated in scarlet, gold, and silver with rich architecture and lavish furniture. She gestured for me to go inside, and I obliged to the silent request. She followed me, the door sealing itself behind us once we made it a safe distance from the threshold. My name is Elizabeth, she introduced herself without a hint of emotion in her voice. She looked at me up and down for a moment before snapping her fingers. My flannel PJ bottoms and tank top morphed into a flowing mini dress of silver with silver shoes to match. The silk-like material kept me at a comfortably cool temperature. Now you are more fit for tea time. I followed her to a mahogany-stained door, behind which was a large glass table with metal chairs that could have easily fit 6, though there were only 4 chairs and 4 teacups on saucers set around the table. In the center, a large porcelain teapot was surrounded by silver platters of cookies, cakes, tarts, and crumpets. The head and foot of the table were boasting empty chairs, while the long side of the table had 2 girls, Elizabeth's age, sitting in the chairs on either side. They both had her face. The first one introduced herself as Emily. Her turquoise hair was pulled back in 2 thick ponytails, tied with orange and white ribbons. Her dress matched Elizabeth's save for colors, orange with white hemming and lining. The second girl was introduced as Enid, matching Emily with a turquoise and orange reversed. Her orange hair was braided with turquoise and white ribbons, a bow tied at the end. A glimpse under the table revealed that, like Elizabeth, their boots matched their hair color exactly. Elizabeth poured the rich liquid of tea into each porcelain cup that matched the teapot and adjusted the tongs lying on the platters of each sweet treat so that they were resting on the edge. She gestured for me to have a seat as she took her own at the foot of the table. Guest of honor gets the head chair, she explained as I took my seat and lifted the liquid to my nose to take in the aroma. Peppermint tea. With a little honey and milk it would be perfect. Elizabeth must have been rather sincere in claiming that I was expected, as a bottle of honey stood to one side of my teacup and the other had a small serving pitcher of milk, which, at further olfactory inspection, turned out to be vanilla. Elizabeth was a woman of few words. It seemed observing was more her forte. Enid and Emily discussed the dreams they'd seen. A girl who got sucked into a video game after falling in love with a character. A world of computer parts. A house where all the rooms were pink. Elizabeth sipped her tea as her attention turned from one person speaking to the next person speaking, back and forth, back and forth. I poured a little milk in my tea and then followed her lead. The conversation drowned out shortly into my following it. Instead, I focused on the decor. The architecture featured carved marble pillars holding up a ceiling decorated with marble crown molding that was itself carved. The walls were painted a deep red with a cream-colored floral texture from the ceiling down to the smooth marble wainscoting halfway down the wall. While the marble on the wall was white with black speckling, the marble tile on the floor had the opposite polarization of color. The rug that stretched out beneath the table matched the colors of the wall with a more simple framed pattern. Silver and gold flakes were sprinkled throughout the marbling, creating a sparkle throughout the room where most of the light had hit. The ceiling featured a welded grate in silver star and heart patterns, the golden chandelier lingering from the center, creating a glow. In all my life I had never imagined the moon to be more lavish than dirt and rock. I had fallen for the Maid of Cheese rumor, but then I entered first grade and was quickly, and fortunately, kindly, corrected. Yet there I was, seated at tea time in a heavenly estate that was not only visually pleasing, but audibly as well. The acoustics bouncing the voices around the room were perfectly complemented by the soft sound of a water current permeating through the ceiling. Upon asking, Enid explained that it was the rush of underground rivers. When I drank my last drop, the girls stopped talking, and Elizabeth stood up to take her turn. "I would like to tell a story," she announced, walking to my side of the table to pour me another cup. I prepped my tea and watched as Emily and Enid sipped their tea, which surely would have been cold by then. "It's about a girl," Elizabeth continued. "She was just your average, everyday girl, going through the motions of her life. But to someone, she was the world. She was loved not for her perfection, but for the way her imperfections added to her enticing personality, and her talents and her creativity. She did not believe she was lovable, though they told her every day, not just with their words, but with their deeds. A dark cloud hung over her throughout the years, and the rain had finally come. She had been expecting the sky to fall for as long as she could remember, and as she had figured, she had turned out to be ground zero. So many pills prescribed just to keep a semi-level head. Hard to choose which one would be perfect to go into that good night. Serotonin overdose, or the tried and true sleeping pills? Maybe a mixture of both? Would the overdose of the other pills be painful? Nobody would be home for hours. She would be cold, wrapped in the sheets of the king-size bed before the front door opened. But time is not eternal, and she had a choice to make. "What did she choose?" I inquired, my hand poised to grab the cup by its handle, but not quite committing to the action. "I don't know," Elizabeth said, then took a long sip of her tea to have a reason for her dramatic pause. "What did you choose?" Just then it all came flooding back. The psychiatric ward with the rooftop garden was not real. My lover was gone at work, and I myself lay dying of my pharmaceutical mixture. I had always suspected I would die of self-defenestration. Instead, I had chosen the cleaner route. The lights on the chandelier dimmed as the three women stared at me, waiting for my response. I had nothing to say.